Today we help you meet your design goals and get better feedback by refining how you define your cube. Welcome to Cultic Cube, where we cube religiously. We make you better at cube and make your cube better. When I started my first cube, I pulled out boxes of draft chaff from the back of my closet and spent an evening sitting on the floor amid a colorful maelstrom of cardboard, trying to couple together something like a limited deck on a grand scale, with a curve and a mixture of spells. Everyone has to start somewhere, and this was as good a place to start as any, but it definitely was not a good place to end. I did not have a guiding vision for the cube's goals, its power level, or its speed. This video will help designers, both novice and veteran, to define their cube and thereby better refine their design goals. I am delighted to welcome special guest landofMordor. He is the author of the Strix Scale, a readily interpretable system of rating cube power and speed. I am excited to hear him explain the features and applications of the rating scale that he pioneered. I will argue today for the benefits of describing your cube in a meaningful, if pithy way. Then we articulate the major axes of cube design, and we wrestle with issues such as how to define relative power and speed. Finally, we weigh the merits of existing descriptive methods. It is critical for cube designers to have a strong sense of what they are trying to accomplish with their cubes. Many of us begin to hammer out our design by establishing the macro limitations of our environments. Common cube stipulations involving rarity, color identity, or monetary value give rough shape to a cube. A simple label for a cube is like the frame of a painting. It quickly establishes scale and scope, but it is the detailed strokes that make the painting into art. Having established the contours of one's cube, one has to think seriously about its play experience. A first consideration is relative power level. For many people, the presence or absence of actual and honorary power establishes power level. This is an exceptionally coarse measure. One should further develop a sense of average power level, as well as range of power. That is, how powerful is one's average card, and how great is the difference between one's highest and lowest power cards. One can aim for a flat power band, or allow for more variation in power. A second consideration is how much variance one builds into an environment. Spiky designers, like spiky players, often wish to minimize variance. Wizards introduced the 60-card minimum deck size and the Fora rule to constructed Magic in order to prevent players from presenting decks comprised entirely of mountains and lightning bolts, or of black lotuses, channels, and fireballs. Magic relies on some amount of variance, and cube curators typically respect this, at least insofar as most cubes are singleton sets with exactly one lightning bolt available in the format. Designers who wish to reduce variance may, though, find plenty of worse bolts to run. By contrast, some designers may wish to promote variance by introducing coin flips, privileging random selection, embracing silver-bordered weirdness, banning tutors, etc. Cube size affects variance as well. The smaller the cube, the more rigorously one can control the density of particular effects and access to key components of archetypes. A third aspect to weigh is to what extent one wishes to enable games of solitaire. Or put another way, how hard does one push player interaction in one's environment? We often think of interaction in terms of doom blades and counterspells, spells that interact with the board or the stack. Combo is, as a rule, largely uninterested in this sort of interaction. The example of this is Storm, of course, but one would do well to consider Reanimator and Natural Order in similar terms. Reanimator would love counter-magic backup when it sticks its win con, but the deck largely wishes to play its own game on its own terms. The cube that supports Combo, then, is moving the needle away from interaction towards solitaire. My friend Zalthux has a tabletop game analogy to describe cube focus, and he uses Monopoly and Settlers of Catan as examples of games that occupy vastly different places on a spectrum of relative player interactivity. Performing such focused meditation on one's desired format is useful, not only for articulating one's goals to oneself, but also for communicating them with others. In order to solicit useful feedback and to avoid misunderstandings, one should be transparent about one's design goals. When interlocutors offer honest opinion, but the conversation is marked by an unarticulated mismatch in design aims, needless friction may result. People have tried to stave off such miscommunication by developing labels or metrics to describe cubes. An old model employs the names of constructed formats. A vintage cube includes cards that are legal in vintage, and the cube may or may not include the power 9. Legacy cubes more or less obey legacy bans, and are presumably a bit slower. Modern cubes generally allow for some relatively fast combo, but are tuned to avoid kills before turn 4 or so. Standard has fewer and clunkier combos, and aims to allow kills on turn 5 or later. This general model is imprecise, and it tends to conflate distinct issues: individual card legality, card-by-card power, and format speed. Nevertheless, this model imparts some amount of information that can be grasped immediately by any reasonably enfranchised Magic player. Moreover, the MTGO platform relies on this shorthand. Thus, these labels remain popular descriptors, as my informal Twitter poll suggests. Several years ago, the MTGCube subreddit contributor Shadow Centaur proposed the Strix Scale for rating individual cubes. One assigns a number to a cube that indicates at what point in a pack one would pick up a Serra Angel. This metric has entered into the lexicon of cube design, but it is my sense that it has not been widely adopted. The scale loses descriptive power at either extreme. Black Lotus has always invalidated the scale, and in 2019 we have so many Serras with upside that Serra Angel struggles to represent a mid-tier format staple. The most recent cube taxonomy, the Strix Scale, is the brainchild of Mordor. I am pleased and honored to welcome him to the episode.
Hello, I'm the Reddit user known as landofMordor, but you can call me Mordor. I'm the author of the Strix Scale, and I'm joining in today to offer a little insight on the newest power level shorthand for the cube community. In my humble opinion, the Strix Scale's primary innovation is that it is a way to combine the format differentiation afforded by those discrete categories we're so used to: legacy, vintage, unpowered, powered, while also acknowledging, like the Serra Scale does, that power is a sliding quantity. In short, the Strix Scale is a numerical amalgamation of a format's fast mana, the efficiency of threats and answers, the prevalence of game-warping bombs, the degree and type of mana fixing, and more. A Strix 10, for example, is the all-star team of cube, power 9, honorary power, format-defining cards. It's what most curators mean when they say powered cube. At the opposite end of the spectrum, a Strix 1 would be like retail limited, characterized by imperfect mana fixing, inefficient mana investment, and games warped around the quality of one's draft bombs. Most cubes lie somewhere in the middle. My own cube, for instance, is a comfortable 6. I dislike the gameplay characterized by reliable fast mana, and I eschew many of the pricey staples of power maxing cubes. But nevertheless, I prioritize excellent mana fixing, efficiently costed cards, and a small degree of fast mana in the form of an incomplete cycle of talisman. Incidentally, that's thanks to another video on this channel, so you should check it out if you haven't already. The second axis of the Strix Scale is speed. At its most basic, speed describes how soon a format's games end. But it's a less quantitative axis and therefore tricky to define precisely. In general, fast cubes are ones with well-supported aggro, where a lack of early board presence often leads to a loss. And slow cubes, by contrast, are formats where players have more time to accumulate and spend resources. My own cube is fast because I've learned through playtesting that every deck needs to commit resources to the board by turn 2 or fall behind. But most traditional cubes are neutral speed. These two axes of the Strix Scale, power and speed, can be combined, like my own 6F cube, to yield a more complete descriptor of an environment. I'll freely admit that the Strix Scale is the most useful for designers like myself, whose cubes are neither powered nor retail limited. The reason is that Magic's power level is like a pyramid. At the top, there is a very small volume of playable cards. Powered cubes have very little need for a specialized terminology, because the number of playables in a format alongside the power 9 is extremely finite. As power level decreases, though, the pool of cube-worthy cards widens with a corresponding increase in viable themes and archetypes. The Strix Scale lets cube designers assign a semi-quantitative measure to the size of their cube's pyramid, and therefore, cube designers can articulate to themselves and others roughly how many strategies, archetypes, and cards are cubable in their format's pyramid. When I first had the idea for the Strix Scale, I naively imagined everything from single card discussions to preview season framed by the scale. But after observing community members adopt and use the scale, I've realized that power differentiation scales of any kind are never really about discussing individual cards. Those scales can't construct from the inside out the power pyramid I mentioned before. The whole benefit of shorthand is more about assigning oneself a subset of the pyramid to explore. Therefore, the greatest contribution of the Strix Scale, and all of the other scales like it, is that they give an opportunity for curators to intentionally consider their design goals. Much like any Fortune 500 company must design projects that appeal to a certain audience, stay under budget, and remain within the limitations of the industry, cubes must navigate a nuanced blend of constraints, with power foremost among them. The simple mental exercise of assigning one's cube a Strix number, as reductive and limited as that power approximation may be, helps the cube curator to consider the rest of this complex nexus of power, nostalgia, budget, synergy, and fun. Taking full ownership of those issues is what makes cube design so rewarding. So, I emphatically urge cube owners to articulate their design goals to themselves, whether they use the Strix Scale or not. I'm thankful for the participation of the community in improving the Strix Scale. I'm humbled that some of you have found the tool helpful for designing your formats, and most of all, I'm grateful to John for the chance to be on Cultic Cube with him. Thank you. When I'm not jamming casual magic in the Philly area, you can find me on Reddit at landofMordor. Catch you around.
Thanks, Mordor. To actualize these power rankings in your own cube, allow me to encourage you to get involved in a larger community of cube designers. I appreciate the specific advice that I have received from colleagues, and further, I am grateful for opportunities to refine my ideas through conversation with others. I have had the good fortune to befriend many subtle thinkers, and generally awesome people, through cube discussion. Come join in the conversation. If you want more cube design theory, check out my last video, which treats planeswalker density. Let's keep hanging out and chatting cube.